I did the research, outlined the book, and even hired a ghostwriter. I thought everything was good to go and publish ready, but I was mistaken. Find out what I discovered when editing and proofreading the manuscript, and also get details on how to find a good book editor and why editing and proofreading is essential to producing good, high-quality books for your self-publishing business. Make sure you stay tuned. Hey, I'm Dale L. Roberts, best-selling author as well as self-publishing advocate who wants to show you how to publish books that sell. If you want that too, of course, subscribe to this channel and join me on Twitch every Monday at 12. And if you have Amazon Prime, you can subscribe to me for free at twitch.tv/self-publish, and you get a few freebies in the process. Just a heads up, this is the third part in the How to Self-Publish a Book series that's put together in cooperation with the fine folks over at Fiverr. So if you've missed any of the previous videos, I'll leave a link down inside the description down below where I covered the research process, the outlining, and also hiring out the ghostwriter. So you've done the research on your niche. You've really gone all in. You produced the content. What comes next? Now, naturally, a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, my baby's all done. It's ready to go. Let's go ahead and publish it. Please don't do that. The next best step is going to be absolutely critical. So that way you can keep readers for the long term and start to grow a following. Because if you just put out a rough draft or just simply self-edit and hope for the best, you're going to be in for some real heartache. Now, just really quick, a lot of people say, okay, editing and proofreading, those are the same thing, right? Not really. I want you to think about editing as being that line, that first line of defense in which it actually helps clarify your message. It gets it to where it's more clear. It covers any type of ambiguities that you have. They're able to get it to where they flesh out the best version of you as a writer as they possibly can. It's not just simply finding typos or small grammatical errors. Sometimes it has a lot to do with syntax or even just the voice in which you're communicating. There's so many deeper levels of editing that requires an entirely different video altogether. But just to kind of say this, the editor really helps bring out the best version of you. Now, I want you to think of the proofreader kind of like the last line of defense. That proofreader is going to go through and just put a little bit of a shine and a bit of a sheer in things and just kind of address any last minute issues. They're going to cover those typos and those smaller grammar errors and maybe some things that are missing inside your manuscript. Why you shouldn't do it yourself is because you're going to gloss over a lot of the mistakes that you would make. You're going to miss some of the bigger picture things that you don't see because you're kind of in a bubble as a writer within that universe that you've created in your manuscript. So you always need to reach outside of yourself and get it to an unbiased party who's going to take this apart and really analyze it and make it the best work it can be. But how do you find a good editor? I always recommend go with referrals first, because if you know another author that's had great experience with an editor, then chances are pretty likely you might enjoy your experience with them as well. Also, you can look into freelancing websites, and of course, I'm going to be talking about the editing and proofreading I did through Fiverr here in just a moment. There are other freelancing sites as well, but out of respect to Fiverr, I'm not going to mention them. It's important though, if you've got a pretty lengthy manuscript, that you test drive an editor, that you make sure that it's going to be a good fit. It's kind of like, putting together a good rock band. You don't want to just put in any old person into any old position. You want to make sure that you can all work in synchrony and that you can really get it to where you produce great quality music together and that you're not clashing or at odds at all times. So I always say test drive. Now, for the instance of this very short manuscript that I have here, I really didn't have to worry about going completely all in as far as my budget went. But if it was a longer manuscript, chances are very likely I probably would have tested out at, say, 5,000, no more than about 10,000 words on a specific editor, just to make sure it was going to be a good fit. Before you do send it off to your editor, and your editor will thank you for this by me giving you this information, don't just send off a first draft. They will absolutely despise the ground that you walk on if you just send a first draft that's just riddled with errors. It hasn't been cleaned up at all. So what I always recommend is you're gonna do a quick edit. You're gonna do it through 2 different sources. And for me, I typically go through something simple like Microsoft Word's grammar and spelling checker. And I just go through and I just clean up any kind of small, infractions. So any kind of typos, any just small grammatical errors, I just go through really fast. And then I'll take that same manuscript and I'll go over to something like Grammarly and I'll just put it right on in there. I go through that editor again. And I just try to make it as fast as possible. I try to make split-second decisions so that way it's a quick process, hence quick editing. And then I will take my time and I'll go through what's called line editing. And that means going through each and every single line, making sure that all of them work together and it's very cohesive, and see if you're missing any areas. One of my favorite ways to do line editing is actually through Microsoft's read aloud feature. And actually I'll show it on the screen here. You can click on that and it'll read it to you, and just sit back and allow the reader to give it to you instead of you reading it yourself. You got to sit there and listen to what it says so that way you can correct anything that sounds off. Now it's time to hire an editor. So just as a review, I went through and I did a ghostwriting gig because I'm strapped for time right now and I'm not able to put together any kind of work for this series. Keep in mind, I'm going to unveil this work in a future video, so make sure you're staying tuned and you're subscribed to this channel. So naturally, I went back to Fiverr, and all you got to do is head over to dalelinks.com/Fiverr. Remember, Fiverr has 2 R's at the end. You're going to select editing and narrow down your search according to your budget and your type of needs. For me, I typically try to look for a seller that has had some experience. There's nothing wrong with trying out some new sellers, but to me, I just don't have too much time to be testing people out. I would rather spend a little bit more money and work with a level 2 seller or a top-rated seller. And when you go over into their particular gig, look at the number of reviews that they have and the average star rating and see how many orders are inside the queue, so that way you can make sure this is going to work out. I highly recommend always reach out to editors and proofreaders before you send them work. It doesn't hurt just to kind of make sure that it's going to work out. Sadly, I got so excited in doing this video series, I just went and processed the order, and thankfully the editor actually worked with me. Cindy was just fantastic. She was so forgiving and very flexible, and I was able to send the manuscript and get it back within a couple of days. Now, she came highly recommended from the folks over at Fiverr among a couple of other choices. I just narrowed it down to her, and I'm glad that I did, because she took this manuscript that I really kind of was really happy about it. There was just some innocuous issues that I had initially with the ghostwriting gig, sent it back, she fixed them, it came back, and Cindy, the editor, was able to just break it down point by point and saw just some holes there, and I was like, oh my gosh. Thankfully, she sent a manuscript with the notes that she had, and some of the changes weren't applied. Then she sent another manuscript with all of the changes applied and additional notes of some areas that might need some fine-tuning. So I just went through, I was able to kind of adjust some of those things, and I approved the gig. She did fantastic work. It was time to move on to a proofreader because I went through, edited it myself. Now, I would recommend that if you're the type of person who's strapped for time, you can always just hire an additional gig from an editor to make sure you refine it, or even go back to the original ghostwriter and see if they can fine-tune those things for you. This depends largely on your time and your expenses that you have. I had some time and I was willing to go ahead and put a little bit of effort into this because this is an interesting project and something that I actually highly identify with, and I'm sure you folks will identify with it as well. So next was hiring a proofreader. It was the same process as hiring an editor. I just went over to dalelinks.com/Fiverr and I selected the proofreading gigs, narrowed it down to the budget and the type of seller that I wanted. And again, this proofreader became highly recommended from the folks over at Fiverr, so I went ahead and gave her a chance, and it took her about a couple of days and it came back, and I thought for sure it was going to be ironclad, rock solid, everything was good to go, and she was able to pick out some additional issues. So big thank you to Amanda, I appreciate it. And much like what Cindy did with the editing, Amanda did the same thing, in which she had some notes and the suggestions, and then she had a final draft with the actual corrections made and the notes. And it was kind of nice because I was able to just go into the notes, fix a few issues, and cleaned it up quite better. And then I went through the full editing, quick editing part and Grammarly and such, and I was able to get it all really fine-tuned. So what comes next? Naturally, we've already gone through the research, the writing, the editing and proofreading. We need to get over into the formatting and book cover design. I've got you covered in the next part in this video series. Soon to come in this very next video down here. You're going to want to make sure that you take a look at it. Till later, I will see you in the very next video.